welcome. My name is Kelly Anderson, and this is Fanimated, an animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. This week, I'm joined by Emma Martin to discuss Song of the Sea, the beautifully animated Selkie story directed by Tomm Moore and produced by Irish animation studio Cartoon Saloon. I want to thank everyone on the Fanimated crew over on Patreon for voting on this topic. You can also vote for upcoming episode topics for as little as $1 a month over at patreon.com/Fanimated. Now, Emma and I have so much to explore with this beautifully rich film, so spoiler warning for the Song of the Sea, and let's get started and let's get animated. Hello, Emma. Welcome back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Kelly. Thanks for having me back. Excited to be here.
Awesome. We are up bright and early on a Saturday morning, and we are ecstatic to be talking about
Song of the Sea.
Song of the Sea. It's gonna be so great, guys. This is a party. Emma and I are Ireland buddies. We visited Ireland together when we were in college as part of a 3-week-ish long study abroad program. And so we've experienced Ireland together, and it's wonderful watching this movie and making me just want to be there again.
Oh, definitely. There are references that just take me back. And I would have to say, for those who have heard about our Irish endeavors, I think that this was kind of a turning point in our friendship. We were always friends, but this was the point where we really bonded. And so Ireland holds a special place in our heart.
It does. It really does. I mean, we went through so much during that trip, and we were studying a very, deep topic. We were studying the troubles of Northern Ireland in the 70s, which is fascinating, and I encourage people to research that. But to experience so much of that firsthand with people who lived through it, and it was very heavy. It was a beautiful journey for sure. And then of course being able to just go to Giant's Causeway and look over the beautiful ocean with Emma, and we walking along the shore is great. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would have done if you weren't on that trip, because you were my main buddy.
Yes. It's true. It was so good. We only split up once during our free time because we had a few days of free travel, and you of course needed to get to Scotland.
I did. It was my destiny.
Is your destiny to revisit the homeland?
The homeland.
Yes, and I was sick of traveling and went to some little seaside place and just sat there for 3 days. It was great. But yes, I digress. Basically, Ireland is beautiful, and when the pandemic ends, we'll have to go visit again. Although I think Japan is first on our list.
Japan is first on our list.
Definitely.
For sure.
Yeah, it's up there. We need to get to Japan. And I would encourage other people to visit Ireland. But since we can't right now, let's talk about this movie where you can visit Ireland in spirit.
Exactly.
Yes. So Cartoon Saloon is an Irish animation studio in Kilkenny, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually went to Kilkenny. It's beautiful.
We went there, yeah.
Yeah, we were there. And this film was made also in part by animation studios in Belgium, Luxembourg, France, and Denmark. Cartoon Saloon is a fairly small studio, and of course they contracted out some work to other studios who also ended up putting a lot of themselves into the work, and it shows. Everyone working on this film clearly had a heart for it. They created something really beautiful. So Cartoon Saloon, you may know, their first film was The Secret of Kells, also directed by Tomm Moore. And they got a lot of recognition for that. And so Song of the Sea was their next. And their third in this little trilogy is Wolfwalkers, which just recently came out in theaters. Unfortunately, since it's a limited release, I didn't get a chance to go see it, but I'm definitely going to buy the DVD because I don't need to see it to know it's going to be good. Also directed by Tomm Moore. What he does in all these films is he just takes classic Irish folklore and fairy tales and just brings it, forward to like looking at it through a fresh lens and really creating something beautiful. They've got a really, really specific like animation style that I'm really excited to talk about later. But for Song of the Sea, the basic premise is we've got this little family. Connor is the father. We've got their about 10-year-old son, Ben, and his little sister, Saoirse, who's 6 at the beginning of the film. She just turned 6. Their mother actually passed away, is out of the picture, and you kind of learn that story later on in the film. But what happens is it's Saoirse cannot speak. She's a mute throughout most of the film, and she finds out that she is a Selkie, so she can turn into a seal. It's basically the Irish version of a mermaid. Women who turn into seals, and they wear this seal coat that helps them turn into a seal. And so they take that kind of folklore as well as folklore from other places, and basically Ben and Saoirse are taken by their grandmother to live in the city. Ben, of course, does not want to do that, and escapes, and it's kind of their travel home, and Saoirse follows along, and they find themselves in this magical world with fairies and all sorts of other characters from Irish folklore. And it feels very Wizard of Oz-esque in a way, yet they're still in their normal surroundings. And of course they have to, Ben has to save Saoirse and, get her back to her coat so she can be a Selkie. When was the first time you watched this? It came out in 2014.
Yeah, so I believe you had told me, so Kelly went to Ireland separately from the group because she was in a wedding. And she told me that she watched the movie on the plane. I had not. So on the plane ride back, that's when I watched it. And, well, I'm very thankful for movies on planes because I need them to concentrate. But it was very, very impactful. And then I just recently watched it about a year ago with my family because it came out on Netflix. And I was like, oh, Mom, Dad, you have to see this film. It's so good. So the first time was on my way back from Ireland. So it was definitely not nostalgic because it wasn't too soon in the future, but it definitely felt warm to the heart because I had just spent my whole month in Ireland and I was getting another last taste as I was leaving.
Yes. My flight from Minneapolis to Paris, they were showing it. So I, of course, watched it and fell in love with this story. And then while we were in Ireland, I found a way to watch Secret of Kells as well because I was so in love with this film that I was like, oh, I've got to know what else the studio's done. And of course, Secret of Kells is beautiful. Highly recommend that as well. Man, it was just such an interesting thing that I watched it on the way to Ireland, and then it's kind of almost like an introductory to Ireland.
Yes.
And so, and since then, of course, I've bought the DVD. I've watched it several times. It's just so charming and beautiful.
So beautiful. Mm-hmm. I love that it taps into all that Celtic fairy tale and folklore. It's just so whimsical and bizarre. Really puts you in a different world.
It does. As of right now, it's definitely my favorite Cartoon Saloon production. They've also worked on The Breadwinner, and they animate for several different like TV shows and other things, but things coming from them specifically. This Song of the Sea is my favorite. Granted, that could change once I watch Wolfwalkers, but for now,
for now, it's the best.
So let's talk about Ben and Saoirse, because they are the heart of this film. It is their story. It is honestly even more so Ben's story. He's the one kind of carrying us through. And Ben starts out as, a very just a turd of an older brother, I should say. turd of a brother, but he's great. He just picks on Saoirse, and he doesn't kind of realize till later why he has such resentment towards her, but basically because their mother gave herself to bring Saoirse into the world, and and having that kind of overlap, and Ben has some resentment towards Saoirse for that, and is kind of, just picks on her and does some mean little things. Saoirse, however, like, even though she can't talk, she can really stand her own. Like, she, for the most part, doesn't let Ben get to her, and like, she has a plan. She's gonna do things her way too, and throughout the film, it's really Ben learning to be a better older brother, and like realizing like, oh man, I have been kind of awful, and I need to do what's best for Saoirse, and he really gives himself sacrifices a lot. He starts out being very afraid of water. He always wears this life vest, and there's even a scene at the very beginning where he gets pulled into the water by Koo, their very large dog, and he's flailing around, and then Saoirse comes walking through. Like, it's not deep at all, and she's just walking through the water.
Right, because she's so little.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. The story is definitely all about, yes, Ben and Saoirse and their relationship as a brother and sister, and how they grow together through pain and loss. But it's more development on Ben's side, because as we'll notice, like, with all the different imagery throughout this show, like, Ben has kind of a stone heart. Like, his heart has been hardened due to his mother's loss. He really values his mom a lot, which, like, I don't blame him for. But, he was the world to her, or he was the world, or she was the world to him. And because she gave her life, because the mom is a Selkie too, because she gave her life to bring Saoirse into the world, like, he's got some bitterness and resentment about that, because, like, he was so excited to be a big brother, and that's clear at the beginning of the movie. He's like, I'm so excited. But because it caused his mother's death, like, he looks at Saoirse with resentment now instead.
Exactly. Shall we just kind of go through the plot a little bit? Would that be helpful?
Sure.
Like, going through
I think
a
so.
little bit? Yeah.
Because there's a lot of different imagery in this show, and it helps to just kind of walk through it.
Yes. So we're kind of introduced, to Saoirse and Ben. Before that little prequel, we get to see, some of Ben's memories. Like you said, he's very excited to be an older brother. His mother kind of says goodbye, and he doesn't really know what's going on. And then after our little introduction with Ben and Koo and Saoirse by the water, we've got their grandmother arriving, and she is, somewhat of an antagonist in the film. And she, Ben and his family live on this lighthouse island off the shore, and it's really beautiful, but of course the grandmother thinks it's no place for the children at all. And so when Saoirse, there's really one of my favorite parts of the film is when Saoirse kind of goes into her dad's closet and finds her Selkie coat, and goes down to the water and discovers she's a Selkie, and swims through the ocean with the seals, and of course, though, from an outside perspective, not knowing what's going on, she washes up on shore, and the grandmother's like, that's it, that's the last straw. Like she was like out in the water at night, and she takes them to the city.
Right. Basically, she's under the impression that since Connor lost his wife, he's not as capable of being a dad anymore because the sorrow has hit him hard. And you see that throughout the film. Like, he's wallowing, and he's just really depressed a lot because of this loss. And so she doesn't think it's like a good situation for the kids to be in. So she just keeps constantly nagging them about moving to the city with her. So that was kind of the last straw.
Yeah. And it's true. Like, Connor, he's so lost in his sorrow for so long, and he doesn't listen to Ben. And he, the one time that he really pays attention to him is when he's, putting him in the car to go with the grandma, and he yells at him like, Ben, stop, fighting this, or, and it's a really, really well done and a really, really poignant goodbye, because everyone is sad and just, they had to say goodbye to Koo, their dog, and it's a really beautiful scene and really shows a lot of all the characters. And when Connor, just has that breaking point and yells at Ben, it's just, my heart, it just hurts. It hurts.
Yeah. And while all of this is happening, we also have like a parallel folklore being told alongside it, and we're walked along with that story. So in this case, it's the story of Meclir, who is the son of a witch, and he has a great sorrow. We're not sure what that sorrow is right away, but it causes him to weep, and the witch takes away his pain by turning him into stone. Mm-hmm. And in the same way, like, this journey is being shared while we're seeing like the father's journey, and while we're seeing Ben's journey, like we see images of that. And one thing that you notice right away at the beginning, before the kids are even sent off to the grandma's house, is there's an image of like Connor, the dad, just looking down and sad, and then in the distance you can see the stone cliff that's shaped like Meclir in the background. So they're forming the exact same shape. And it's that idea of like, they're both going through the same thing. They're both men of sorrow. Or as the narrator tells us, the world is full of more weeping than you can understand. Like, that's a big central theme.
Absolutely. And that shape language is like used throughout the film in so many ways, especially just like a circular motif, which is very strong in Secret of the Kells as well. They're just, using shape language to really express those connections very clearly. So, of course, when Saoirse and Ben make it to the city, which I believe is Dublin, because, they walk through the city and there's that statue of Molly.
Oh, that's right.
And there's other. So they're in Dublin for sure.
We've been there.
No big deal. But,
we know the way around.
Oh, yeah. We were there for a whole 2 days. We know it. No.
Yeah, we do.
Oh dear, but they obviously don't really fit in with their grandmother's lifestyle. And she, her way of dealing with sorrow, continuing with this theme of grief, she even tells Ben, there will be no crying in my house. Her point of view is to just stuff it all down, don't deal with it and get rid of it, which mirrors later in the film Maka, the owl witch who steals everyone's emotions.
Yeah, and those two characters look a lot alike too, just like Meclir and Connor.
Exactly. And you'll find throughout the film, all of the folklore creatures and characters they meet in kind of the magical spaces are reflective of other characters in their real life. It's very Wizard of Oz-esque, where, you've got all the farmhands who are the scarecrow and the lion and all of that, and you've got that same kind of switch happening between
parallel roles. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Voice acted by the same actors, etc. And so for the grandmother, yeah, that's her way of dealing with it, is get rid of all of the emotions entirely, which, is, we find, especially later with Maka, is not a good way to go about it.
Right.
And so Saoirse keeps trying to find a way back to her coat, and Ben, I love Ben. Ben is just so, he's fantastic. He is just like a matter of fact, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, go off and go home, and he's like sneaking. When he sneaks out of the house is one of my favorite things. And then he finds that Saoirse has been following him the whole time.
The whole time. She just knows. Yes, I love it.
He's like, well, if you're going to come with me, then you have to do exactly what I say. Very older sibling.
And then he puts her on a leash.
Yes, that's it. That's my favorite thing. Oh, man, that's so older sibling material right there. Because he's got this dog leash that he had for Koo, and it's one that, like, is retractable. Extends, yeah. Mm-hmm. And he just has it on his hip, and so he can, clips her on it. Like, you have to do exactly what I say. Oh, it's so funny. Yeah.
I think it's also important to, before we get too far, to note that all this while, Saoirse also has a shell that can play music. And just to give a quick little recap, Ben received this shell from his mom, so he could hear the Song of the Sea. But for Saoirse, she can actually play it. And it acts as a sort of voice for her since she can't speak. Mm-hmm. And all the while, throughout this journey, she will play it. And, little sparkly things will follow them.
Yes. It's like all these beautiful little lights, these magical lights kind of come and lead her. They kind of are leading her. They led her to her coat originally when she started playing the shell in their house. And now when they're trying to get back home, they lead her where she needs to be. And sometimes they follow it and sometimes they don't.
Yes. Sometimes Ben can be very stubborn.
Yes, Ben is very stubborn. And, wants to be in charge.
I just thought we should note that because it does factor in since it holds the Song of the Sea.
It does. And it is a very important part of, of their time with Maka as well, which we'll get to. So they've escaped from mean old grandma's house, and then they get kind of swept away by... it's Halloween night, which, by the way, I should note, is hilarious. They've got, their bonfires going and kids running around. The whole setting is supposed to take place in the 80s. Tomm Moore takes a lot out of his own childhood. Ben's got his rock and roll 80s, cassette tape and all of that. And so Tomm Moore, uses a lot of inspiration from his childhood wandering, the fields of Ireland. And he also remembers Halloween night. One night there was a huge storm and the winds and everything. And it's they'd kind of use it as a, they'd say oh, well, it's the fairies coming out to play. Halloween night is, a night where all of those magical creatures can come out, and so that's kind of an inspiration here as well. So it's Halloween, and all of the fairy tale creatures are, more present and coming out. So they get kind of swept up by actually these 3 fairies and brought to their little abode where most of the fairies are turned to stone, which you'll see that that's what
Except for 3.
Except for 3. Maka and her owls take away people's emotions, put them in jars, and then all that's left is the people are turned to stone. So the fairies take Saoirse because they're like, oh, well, what can, save everyone is the song of a Selkie. So a Selkie has to sing. But of course, Saoirse doesn't speak, so...
Right. So it's a little hard to turn them back into real fairies.
Yeah, and she doesn't have her coat either. So that's a very cute little scene, I think, with the fairies singing their song.
I love that scene. Me too. Yeah, because they sing the song Dulaman, which when I became obsessed with Celtic Woman, that was the song I like sang all the time. Yeah, so like it's very fun, like Dulaman de Quella, Dulaman de Quella, Dulaman de Fada que para mí in it, and like it's just very like festive and folky. But they're like, let's sing this song and we'll turn back to normal. And meanwhile, Ben is like hiding behind one of the stone statues because their sign outside of their little burrow says like no human beings allowed.
Yes.
And so Ben like finishes the song when they can't remember the verses, and it's just super sweet.
It's a very funny moment when that happens because Ben is answering all their questions and they kind of take it as like, we're getting responses back from our other fairies, but all the fairies are turned to stone. So it's just kind of a funny moment.
Right. And, I think it's the first moment in the journey where Ben is being the bigger person. Like, because he's starting to, like, help out.
Yeah.
And he doesn't reveal himself right away. He doesn't say, I'm a human being and I know the answer. He just kind of lays low and he's like, the answer is this. The answer is that. And I feel like it's the first step, like the catalyst of him becoming the better, bigger brother.
Absolutely. I would agree. And it's him, recognizing for the first time that all this magic stuff is real and all the stories he was told by his mom, like they're all real. And that's what he does. He's carrying all these stories. And realizing that Saoirse could really be a Selkie. Of course, Maka's owls attack, and they do get away. You see that Saoirse's shell, when she plays a little music, it kind of keeps the owls at bay a little bit. So she has a lot of power with the song of the sea. And they get away and find a bus that'll take them back.
This made me laugh so hard, Kelly, because like they've got this like crayon drawn map, right?
Yep.
And Ben is like, can you take us here, to the bus driver? And then the bus driver just starts mumbling for a while. It's just like, I suppose we'll get there eventually. It might be a couple hours. Like just like mumbling to himself. And I'm like, this is a reality. I experienced this in Scotland. Because there's a lot of countryside, but like the Irish can be pretty like direct people, very direct and stubborn, which is great about them. It's not a bad thing. And so like they're gonna get where they need to go eventually.
Yeah.
But it was just so funny to me because like I remember when I went to Scotland, like we took a bus in town that took us out to the country because we were going to like the zoo or something, which ended up being closed sadly. But like it was just the most random bus stop in the middle of nowhere. And so it just reminded me of the scene because they get on the bus and he's just like, yeah, well, I mean, we'll get there eventually. So they get on the bus but then along the way, like, Saoirse's just like, no, I think we need to get off now, and just hits the emergency brake thing. So
yeah, she's like, oh, we have to follow the lights instead of, because of course Ben is like, well, the bus will take us home, and Saoirse's like, no, we have to follow the lights. So she kind of, and I love the little moment on the bus too, where Ben asks her like, are you really a Selkie? And she just kind of looks at him, and he's like, oh my goodness. It's true. I like that little moment.
Which, fun fact, I don't know if you remember this, but at the beginning of the movie when she's like walking down the stairs of the lighthouse, her shadow is shaped like a Selkie. Like as she's walking down the stairs.
Yes, that's beautiful. Oh my goodness.
See, it's those details I just love.
Yes, there's so many beautiful little details like that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's, just visually stunning. It's beautiful. And so now they're in the middle of the countryside in Ireland.
They're in the middle of nowhere. So it's like, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. And they meander their way through the countryside. They find Coo, who had been pursuing them after they left. And their next, little stop is basically Saoirse is getting really tired and exhausted, and since they went to the city, she started to get sick, and she's just getting worse and worse. And they find a holy well to stay at for a little bit to get out of the rain. It's just another sweet moment where, like, Ben is carrying her. When she falls over, he says my favorite line, which is, she was riding Koo, and then she falls to the ground, and she like can't get up, and Ben looks down at her and just says, "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph." Oh, it's the cutest thing coming out of this 10-year-old.
I know. It's just like, oh, come on.
Oh, man. And so he carries her through the nettles to the holy well, which is, these places of originally, pagan Celtic worship. And
it's basically a shrine.
It's basically, a shrine and all these old still wells. And then Saoirse even goes and finds some duck leaves for him because he's got the rash from the nettles, and that was sweet.
Yeah, that was so sweet. But then once again, Saoirse is diverted by the sparkling lights that are produced from the song, which cause her to go down the well.
Yes. And of course, Ben is still afraid of water at this point, and I like that Saoirse kind of makes the decision to leave him, like, okay, I've got to go do this, and he's not going to follow me down in the water. But of course, he's still attached to Koo, and Koo dives down, and so he gets
forced
down.
in.
Yeah, he gets forced down, and he comes up, and Koo is nowhere to be found, and it's just him, and he kind of find these little boats, and he kind of floats down, and where he runs into the great Shanaki, who is basically the mirror to him in the real world is Fairy Dan, who is the fairy guy that brings them to and from their hometown and to the lighthouse. And the great Shanaki is basically this keeper of stories. He's got this incredibly long beard that is basically his entire environment in this cave is just filled. It's like tangled to the max, like Rapunzel's hair all over the place, but times 10. Like,
I love this character so much because, one, I love the parallel of him taking them on their journey, helping them along. Gosh, I love that. Storytelling is amazing. But each one of his hairs holds like the story of someone, their memories. And so if you hold on to one strand, it's going to show you like memories of somebody's life. And so he gives Ben eventually a strand of hair that is representing Saoirse so that he can find her. And I just love that imagery.
Absolutely. And he's such this funny guy. Like, he's got all these stories and memories, and yet he can't hold his attention. He doesn't. Yeah. He has like short-term memory loss.
Right. Because all of the memories in his hair, so his actual brain can't hold much.
Exactly. And he's just like weaving in and out of his hair, and he's such a delightful character. It's interesting how well they can get through all this. There's so much like exposition and things that they have to get through in this scene, and yet it's made so much more energetic and fun just by this character who's weaving in and out of things, and very visually exciting. And they find that, of course, Saoirse has been taken by Maka and by the owls. So, like you said, Ben has to follow the hair of Saoirse to get out and get to her.
This is also another connecting moment of Maclear, like the ancient story, and where it's connected to Ben's story, because before he gives the hair to Ben to find Saoirse, he displays the hair that talks about Maclear's story and how he was so sad, so his mother, the owl witch, took his emotion away. Yes. And then he turned to stone. So it's another connecting point to bring those parallel stories together.
Exactly. And so this next part is really, really beautiful. He's kind of like in these caves in this, a deep down dark place where he really has to deal with his subconscious. And he follows the strand, and what's happening is some of the parts of the story are being revealed to him. And he sees, and we see as the audience, basically some of the memories from the prologue, the very beginning of the film, where he's with his mother and she, says goodbye. But here we see, and he sees like the rest of the story, what happens after that. And his mother, goes into the ocean with her coat, and we see Connor running after them. And the only people who come back are Connor and Saoirse, and it's a really beautiful sequence. And for Ben, this is a huge point for him, where he remembers like all the things he said about wanting to be best friends with his sibling, and he's going to be the best big brother ever, and all these things that he just hadn't been doing at all. And seeing, facing his, fear of losing his mom, and recognizing for him, like, I've got to go save my sister. I've got to make things right. It's really beautiful.
It is so powerful. I love it. Which brings him back to the owl house now.
Yes. So he finds Maka and her little treehouse in the middle of a lake, and
her pathway to her house is literally a bunch of stones that are people.
Yeah. All the fairies turn to stone.
All the fairies.
It's so fun. It's scary, but fun. Because whenever he steps on one to get over there, they like give him words of encouragement. It's so cute.
Right. You got this. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, it's sad that they are stone, but they're just funny.
Yes. And so we see Maka finally, and she is basically, she's half turned to stone herself. And she, whenever she has a burst of emotion, she will take the emotion from herself and put it in a jar. So she's slowly turning herself to stone, which is terrifying. And she even like almost convinces Ben to like let her take the emotion away, because he doesn't want it. He doesn't want that sadness, or that loss, that grief. But of course, he's got to save Saoirse. He's got bigger priorities. I really love this whole sequence, talking to Maka, and then he goes upstairs to his little attic and finds Saoirse there, and she's like turning to stone. And they just do such a good job of making Maka, like, you understand where she's coming from, and she's telling, about her son, that, McLear, that she turned to stone too, and she's just trying to help, but she's still like this very intimidating, like, presence, and is scary. And so the really, really beautiful part in this sequence is that, they've got enemies coming from both sides. Basically, the owls are pounding on the window, and Maka is trying to burst through the door, and Ben is trying to get Saoirse to play the shell, which will hopefully break all the glass jars and give the emotions back to Maka. And she just can't do it. And that's when Ben finally is just like apologizes to her for being like a bad brother. And it's such a sweet, tender moment. I love it so much.
Oh, it is so good. I really love this whole situation in the witch's house. Like, the whole scene is one of my favorites of this film. Something to note is that I think it's really cool that like this house is filled with glass jars, and they all have the emotions inside, which are depicted as like rainbows and storm clouds and like weather symbols, which I thought was really cool to depict emotion with.
Yes,
because the weather is ever changing too, so just like our emotions. As you already pointed out, I found it fascinating that the witch also was turning to stone herself, because she herself was struggling with feeling, emotion and feeling pain, and she didn't want that. She wanted to numb herself. So, she's slowly turning to stone. But my favorite moment besides, Ben wanting to be a better brother. My favorite moment is when Maka starts weeping because she's just like, I just wanted to help my son. Like I couldn't stand to see him in so much pain. Is it so wrong of me to take that pain away? Like, oh, that got me, because I was like, okay, she's a really scary person. You're like, it's that typical like witch in the middle of the woods that you don't want to run into.
Yeah.
But like when she starts crying, like I start crying. I was just like, she's just a mom who hates seeing her son in pain. Like,
yeah.
Wow. Like, you don't want that for your child, but like also those emotions, that pain is part of what makes us human,
Yes.
Oh,
it hurts. It hurts. I mean, truly, this entire show, I mean, you get so much emotion from these very simple characters. Like, I'll talk about more of that in the animation. But
another piece of imagery, as they're going to the witch's house, the power lines are shaped like owls.
Yes, they are. I noted that. Oh man. And so that's when Saoirse really collapses for the first time, and they're just like in front of these power lines that look like an owl coming down, and so they're kind of like towering over them. They're framed by this owl, and it's just like more ominous imagery of like, this is what's coming. Ooh, beautiful. So of course they got Maka's emotions back, although Saoirse drops the seashell. It shatters. She falls to the ground. Her hair is completely turned white. This is kind of a low point, definitely, for Saoirse. You realize she's really in big trouble. And of course, the only way to, save her is she needs to get her coat back, and she needs to sing her song. And Maka helps them by, giving them speed with the two hounds. McLear's two hounds are kind of like the wind, and carry Koo and the rest of them all the way back home. And it's a really beautiful sequence, running through the countryside. And it's kind of this duality of joy and wonder, and also just like fear and sadness, because they don't have much time left, and yet they're on this kind of magical journey through the countryside. And then when they get back to the lighthouse, of course, Connor is still just in his stupor and like doesn't understand and won't listen to Ben. Ben is just like, where's the coat? Where's the coat? Connor had thrown it in the chest, and thrown the chest in the water, and threw away the key too. So, it's all lost into the ocean.
Because he just wants to forget,
He just wants to forget.
Buried away.
He doesn't want to lose Saoirse like he lost his wife. And he sees Saoirse and is, puts them all in a rowboat and tries to get her to shore, to the mainland, so that, she can go to a hospital. But Ben just keeps insisting, like, no, we need the coat. And when he finds out it's in the water, he does the most brave thing that he could do. The little boy, afraid of water, takes off his life jacket and dives into the water. It's a beautiful moment. And he sees the little lights that they've been following this whole time, and he's trying to get to, push after them, and then eventually the seals help him, and he gets the coat. Connor, of course, jumps after Ben and brings him up, but he did it like this really, really wonderful moment of triumph for Ben, like, really self-sacrificial, going into the water, pushing himself to the point, this is the farthest point that he can, and getting the coat back for Saoirse. It's really beautiful.
It is so beautiful. Like, this is a really overcoming moment, because Ben finally he's had so many experiences with water throughout the film, and this is finally the moment where he is just like, nope, I love my sister and I want to save her. And it's beautiful to see that development. And
when she finally has her coat on, you hear the first thing that she says is Ben.
Oh, I know. Her first word is Ben. Oh,
my heart. My heart.
You're just like, oh, they bonded. They love each other.
They love each other.
It's so beautiful.
So beautiful. And so she turns into a seal, and they kind of help them to, the little rock that is McClear, the McClear rock. But Saoirse's still, not doing well, and it's like, oh, she's got to sing her song. And this other really sweet and tender, beautiful moment between Saoirse and Ben is Ben is like, I'll help you, and he sings the song to her, and then she's able to slowly start singing the song. Oh my goodness, that whole sequence is so good.
It's so good because this is a moment where, like, the pride in you can want to be like the main character. Like, you want to be the hero of your own story. And sometimes what that means is setting aside yourself and allowing like another person to take the lead with their own gifts. And in this way, I felt like that was Ben. Like he, was pretty determined, pretty stubborn, wanted like his own story, wanted to be like on his own. He didn't want to deal with Saoirse, but now he's at the point where like, I'm going to help you be the best that you can be. Like, I'm going to help you start the song, and then you're going to be the one who sings the song to the end. It's just powerful.
Oh, so good. It's so good. And so she, of course, kind of transforms, feeling better. I love the animation of her kind of floating in the air, and all the lights kind of shine out from her. It's kind of, Northern Lights-esque.
Her hair like transforming back into the brunette, like as it's floating in the air.
Yes, like it's beautiful, this whole sequence. Everything is like floating and like kind of backwards gravity-esque in a way. You see Saoirse, and then when their mom arrives too, like their hair is like floating upwards, and even their little tears like float up instead of going down their face.
Yes. At this point, like Saoirse, her song is not only releasing like all the spirits from the stone, but it's like made like these northern lights almost like spurred out into the sky, and all these different souls like are being seen. So it was kind of funny when I watched this with my mom and dad. My mom was like, "Is this like the Irish version of the Day of the Dead?" Or like, I'm like, "It kind of looks like that, doesn't it?" But no, it's just like her song is finally freeing all of these spirits that have been kept within stone. They're finally like going home, and that even like includes her mom.
Exactly. And when she comes, she's come to kind of take Saoirse away, because Saoirse is also a Selkie, and like all the magical beings have to go, and Ben is like, no, you can't, and even Connor is like, she's all we have, and it's really interesting. I was listening to the audio commentary, and they had some versions of the film where Saoirse does go with her mom, and they felt that it would just kind of rip away everything that Ben has worked towards the entire film, and it's like it really is about Ben and Saoirse. And there's a moment too, it was very last minute, they decided to add the line, and I think it was from I forget who it was. It wasn't Tomm Moore, though. Someone had decided kind of last minute to add the line from Saoirse, like, I want to stay. They didn't even have that in, but they really wanted to make it clear that it was Saoirse's decision. And it's kind of interesting watching that scene, because they do add it in like when her head is turned away from the camera, so they don't even have it animated. It's just like they added a piece of dialogue over everything else. But I'm so glad they did, because otherwise it wouldn't feel the same. It would feel like she's just the prize at the end, that
right. It would be like either she's given to, or she goes with her mom, or like her dad and brother get to keep her, but like it's good that they give her individual choice.
Exactly. And so, Ben worked so hard to save her, and now he, gets to have better memories with Saoirse and grow up together.
Right. And it shows you also how much they've grown together on this journey and how much they love each other because, Ben at the beginning was so mean to her.
Yeah.
But that didn't stop her from trying. Like, she would still try and hang out with him because it's her brother and she wants to be with him. And, finally, through all they've been through, she's just like, I want to stay. Like, this is my family. And
Yes.
this is where I'm supposed to be.
Oh, it's beautiful. Oh, man. And then they have to say goodbye to their mom again. And that's just like, oh, brutal.
It's like, you died. It was really sad. Here you are again. Oh, bye again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sad. But
But
beautiful.
it was also good because I think all of them needed closure.
Yes,
And
it
so
was closure.
Just seeing her one last time was like the last piece of mending their heart.
Absolutely. Oh, it's so sweet.
So good.
And that's basically the whole story. They, get back and Fairy Dan is there with Grandma and they're like, "Oh, yeah, everyone's okay. Yay." And then there's a little epilogue scene where it's Ben's birthday this time because the, film starts with Saoirse's birthday, and at the beginning Ben had pushed Saoirse's face into her cake, and now Saoirse gets her revenge during Ben's birthday party and pushes his head into the cake, which is great.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, it's a cute little ending for us.
Exactly. Oh man, so it's just such a good story. What about the film for you was the biggest part of why you love it so much or why it's been impactful for you?
I think the overall impact is mainly just the theme of sorrow and grief and just how we deal with emotions and process them. I think that's the most powerful thing because this is what I love about stories that are simple. You can tell so much with simple truths. Like sometimes we overcomplicate things and we just need to hear the heart of a message. And this is one of those stories that just tells you in a fun way. Like I love the parallel storylines. I think that's so intriguing because then it, puts a foot in the fairy tale world and a foot in reality for us.
Yes.
Because we're all, both creative and both realistic people, we have our logical side and we have our creative side. So that's a big part of what makes us a human being. But I just love that connection of the simple truth of pain is a part of what makes us human. Emotion is a part of what makes us human, and that's okay. And it's okay to feel pain. It hurts. Yeah. We're not denying that, but it's good to feel those things because it's those pieces that make us stronger. It's those pieces that make us love more. Like when Ben realized that, his mom basically sacrificed herself in order that Saoirse could come into the world. I think that really broadened his perspective about yes, there was pain, but out of it grew more love. And now he gets to have this amazing, loving relationship with his sister by the end of the story. So, yeah, maybe it really hurt at first, but from that hurt, something beautiful grew. So it's just the rose growing from concrete kind of thing.
Yes.
But I just love this. I love this film because it's so beautiful and which we'll talk about the animation because it's just gorgeous and the music is gorgeous. But yeah, it's those simple truths that really just hit home and you're like, wow, I just needed to hear that today, because it's something that you can just relate to.
Absolutely. And listening to the commentary, and I say this a lot, and it's true, one of my favorite, what makes a great film for me is when it is simple and they really craft something beautiful and focused, and the commentary just over and over again was oh, we had to cut this, we had to cut that, but in a good way, they were able to really cut things down to the heart of the film. It is a very, very tight film. And yeah, they really are able to say so much with, a very simple story, very simple animation. like obviously the visuals just captured my attention immediately, and that's why I part of why I love Cartoon Saloon so much. The music, of course, I mean, it's Song of the Sea. They really fulfilled that promise of the title for sure, with their music. And honestly, I love Ben's journey so much, and his journey to becoming, you know, a better brother. And what really sticks out to me is always the very end when his mom is saying goodbye to him, and she says, "Remember me in your stories and your songs," and then she leaves. And so it's like, Ben this whole time has been telling Saoirse all of the stories that his mom used to tell him, and so it's kind of like this call to like continue telling stories and continuing it on, and it's something that I really love about you know, just thinking about story in general, like you know, so much lives within the stories we tell, and you know, I can imagine Irish culture as well, like thinking of all of the, you know, all of these fairy tales that they're talking about, and how they're passed down, you know, throughout the years, and you know, it's kind of just a part of their culture, a part of them, and like all of these people and places and things that get kind of held in time, like through these stories that we tell. So I really love that idea. So we've been talking a lot about the animation, so let's just dive into it. Yes. What's fantastic about this film is that everything looks like a storybook. Like, yes, every moment just feels like you're reading something out of an illustrated, you know, children's book. And you look at the concept art for this film, it looks the same as the final version. Like, they really tried to bridge that gap of like, here's the concept art and we're gonna follow through with that throughout the entire thing.
Yeah. I love that it's a mixture of 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional art. 3-dimensional more in like, you know, the movement, like walking through town and things like that, but very 2-dimensional with like backgrounds and everything. Like everything's on the same plane. Like I think one of my favorite examples was while they're journeying through the woods, there's an image of like these badgers underground. And instead of like showing like a little like a hill of grass, like they show the badgers actually underground like you would in a storybook. Yes. Like, so it's not like realistic so to speak, but I love that layering.
Yes. Like, and another example, like just the way that they you know, to understand depth and things like that. Like when Ben jumps into the water at the end, for example, you see almost as if they sliced through a piece of the water and like took it out. So you're looking straight forward at like almost like as a child would draw. You have the water line and the boat above it, and below that is Ben, if that makes sense at all as I explain that. It's like they take a piece of the pie and they take the pie out, and you can just see the layers of depth in that way, in a very flat, yeah,
it's flat. No, that's a good, it's a good word for it, because like there will be like images where you're seeing a landscape of the countryside and like a building is like tilted on its side, because it's like how they perceive like something further away, even though like in realistic imagery you wouldn't draw a house on its side, like, because that doesn't make sense. So it's very flat, like storybook-esque.
Yes, and that's a very strong stylistic choice that they've used in Secret of the Kells as well. And like if they look down on something, for example, like they look down from the ceiling at Saoirse and Ben in a bedroom, and you have all of the walls, you actually see them almost laid out. So like if you take the walls and you push them down onto the ground and you're looking down on them, so you see all the posters, you still see all the posters and everything on the walls, and it's that kind of a style that is just so fascinating and beautiful and feels Yeah, like you're in the mind of a child.
Yeah, you're in a storybook, walking through a storybook. I love this because you never see this happen. Like, this is so different, and that's what makes it so artistic. I love it.
And for their backgrounds, what's really fantastic is, it's all of these watercolors and beautiful pieces, and they're able to use this technology to actually make the backgrounds move. And so you have like a watercolor sky, and the clouds that are watercolor are also moving. It feels so rich, and that's how they do a lot with like the water too. They're able to like subtly move all of the backgrounds, and the characters in contrast are, they're a hand-drawn animation. They're very simple. They also have a lot of texture to them as well, so that really everything feels cohesive. Everything that moves in the background, everything that moves in a character feels like all it's one part, one piece of everything. A lot of times, especially in older animation, like if there's something in the background that will move, you know exactly what is about to move because it's got to be a different layer than the background because it's animated, if that makes sense. And so here, what they're able to do is they're able to make, let's say a bush moves. Like traditionally, you would have the bush would have looked very different than the rest of the bushes around it because it was about to move. And it was because it was on a different layer entirely. And so what they're able to do is actually paint it like with the rest of the background, but then they're able to move pieces of that painting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
So that's really cool. Of course, they have some 3D Blender elements as well with like cars, coming by, and that's of course painted over with the same texturing to make it look cohesive.
The exhaust of Granny's car.
Oh yes, yeah, things like that, and the fog, like that's all like this background watercolory thing that they're able to move. Like it's so beautiful.
I also love the different textures of like Celtic symbols within the backgrounds. It's that parallel universe again we've got going on. So like I think about when Saoirse first goes underwater, she like swims past these jellyfish that like the center of the jellyfish has like a Celtic knot shape. So it's just like always intertwined. It's like that idea of like, magic isn't everything, or life isn't everything that we see.
Yes, I love that. It's so true. There's so many little details and things going on in the background. Like it's fantastic. Just rewatching this and seeing all the little nuggets of things. Production cost. Guess how much it cost to make.
Oh my God, what's the typical range?
I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes. It really, it depends on what movie you're making.
Let's say $1 million. Probably way too high.
$1 million is way too low, actually.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
No, it cost only 6 million euros to make this film.
Dang. And that's basically like dollars. The euro is very similar to the dollar.
It is. It truly is.
I know. I went to Ireland.
You know. It fluctuates, of course. But in contrast, one of the highest cost animation films was Tangled, and that was $260 million.
Oh my.
So
yes.
comparatively...
Very, very cheap.
Yes.
Pocket change.
It is nothing.
It's nothing.
But it just proves that you can do so much with what you have. Like,
oh, it's so true.
Because this is just such a beautiful story and such an impactful movie. And yet, they, even with their astounding visuals and style and music and everything, like you'd think it would cost 10 times more. But they're able to do it on such a low budget. So I'm just so impressed.
Yeah, very impressive for sure.
I also just wanted to note that in the commentary, Tomm Moore was talking a lot about inspirations for the film. I mentioned Wizard of Oz, but also a lot of Studio Ghibli and My Neighbor Totoro, as well as like E.T. and that kind of feeling as well. Because here's Ben trying to get his magical sister, back home, kind of idea.
Sure.
So I thought that was fun, and you can kind of see some of that inspiration in the film.
Definitely. I also really appreciate the sound design of this film.
Yes.
I think about so we've got these floating lights following them or leading them the whole way, and they make like this twinkling sound, like almost like one of those. Oh, what are they called?
Or like a rattle sound almost.
Like wind chimes. Like wooden wind chimes or wind chimes made out of like glass, like just like floating in the wind. Like you've got that really peaceful noise going on. I just love that sound. Like every time the lights would come around, I'd be like, oh, they're so pretty.
Yes.
The shell that Saoirse uses to play. Like the sound of that shell is so pretty. It's like very hollow and very like it's just so, it's got a beautiful tone and it's lovely to listen to. It's like kind of like a very low flute sound. So I just like really appreciate the sound design, like just in like not just the music, because the music, as we've said, is absolutely gorgeous. That's a given. But like just the music in the little things, whether it's the twinkling lights or the wind or like the ocean waves, like I'm just so impressed.
I agree. Oh my goodness, it's fantastic. Everything really gets you into the environment of the film, and they do such a good job with the sound design, and they do a fantastic job with the music as well.
Oh,
the soundtrack,
it's so beautiful.
Oh, it just takes you away into this magical place, magical Ireland, and I listen to the soundtrack all the time. It's just so relaxing.
Yeah, you'll want to take a listen, even if you haven't seen the film. Like, it'll give you a feel for what this film is all about.
Absolutely. So, just well done to the entire team. Like, animation-wise, sound design-wise, music-wise, voice acting. Oh, wonderful.
Yes. I mean, for all you Harry Potter fans out there, Brendan Gleeson, our Mad-Eye Moody, is Connor, the dad. So, shout out to him.
For sure. Yes. So... yeah, just go watch this movie. It's beautiful. It's breathtaking. I mean, we talk a lot about a lot of, Hollywood studios, and it's just nice to be able to point to another, international studio that's doing absolutely breathtaking work. Just watch any of their films, and it's so refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of you know that I love my Disney and I love my Studio Ghibli and all that. But I got to say, this is one of those, I would put this higher on the list. Like, it is just so beautiful and well put together. So I'm all about supporting those independent filmmakers.
Absolutely. They have so much heart for this story, and it's just done so well. It's so beautiful.
So well.
Mm-hmm. So thank you to the patrons for voting on this topic.
Woohoo!
Because, oh man, the patrons at patreon.com/Fanimated were able to vote on quite a few different ones. I've been looking at my list of top 10 of the 2010s. I have that episode. Definitely listen to that. And there's a lot of topics on there that I haven't been able to give a full-length episode to yet.
Sure.
And so the patrons... were able to vote on this one and chose this out of some other options. And so thank you for supporting the show, guys, and thank you for voting. I've been meaning to get around to Cartoon Saloon for a really long time. It's been on really high on my list, and especially now, since we visited Ireland, and it's kind of a big part of like
close to
our
home.
It's close to home. It's part of our experience and our friendship. So
our friendship.
So yeah. So thanks guys for doing that and making this episode possible.
Yes, thank you for voting for this. I highly encourage you to grab a cup of Earl Grey or English breakfast tea or Irish tea, whatever you want, and get your milk and sugar and just sit and watch this film and just be filled with warm thoughts and joy, and remind yourself that you got this. You're human and your emotions are valuable.
Yes, your emotions are valuable. Feel those emotions. Embrace them. You don't want to turn to stone.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that.
It might kind of suck.
Yeah.
It'll weigh you down.
Great, Emma. So thank you, Emma, for chatting with me about Song of the Sea.
Of course.
I'm so excited to eventually watch Wolfwalkers with you and see what you think of that.
I know. I'm so excited.
Oh man, I cannot wait. It's gonna be good.
It will be so good.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. And Emma and I will be back next week.
See you then.
Thank you so much for listening. Remember that you can join the Fanimated crew and vote for upcoming episode topics like this one by going to patreon.com/Fanimated. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Fanimated Podcast to stay up to date with all things animated, and don't forget to leave a rating and review telling us what you'd like us to watch next. The music is provided by Purple Planet Music, and the art is done by myself. You can find me on Instagram at CandorDraw. That's KANDERDRAW. Thank you, Emma, for joining me, and we'll be back next week to discuss what we've been watching recently. So in the meantime, stay tuned and stay animated. I was trying to do vocal warm-ups like, okay, use your voice a little bit before you start.
Oh my gosh, I should have. Right now I feel like I sound very raspy. Like a very jazzy woman.
Jazz.
Welcome to the podcast this morning. With Kelly and Emma this morning.
This is your Fanimated discussion round.
Your Fanimated morning special. Many mumbling mice are making midnight music in the moonlight.
Many mumbling mice are making midnight music in the moonlight. For a second,
One more time, honey. One more time.
Many mumbling mice are making midnight music. What?
Oh.
Making. What are they making?
Midnight
music in the moonlight. Okay. Many
Yes.
mumbling mice are making midnight music in the moonlight.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are.
Good job.